Hello, everyone. Welcome to Read the Room podcast. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Alyssa. And this is the podcast about books, relationships, and the relationships in books. Okay, so before we start every episode, today we're going to be talking about Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkin Reid. But first, we're actually going to talk about what books we're reading in our personal life. So Chandler, take it away.
Well, this isn't really the book I'm currently reading because I touched on that in the Twilight episode.
Yeah.
A little peek behind the screen, everybody, but we're recording more than one episode at a time. Anyone seeing us right now can see that we're in the same clothing and have the same things. But I recently read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I touched on A Closed and Common Orbit at the top of last episode, Evelyn Hugo episode. If you haven't listened to that yet, feel free to go to that one. But you don't have to. You can listen to this one first. You're here anyway. Why not? But yes, it is it's not really a prequel. It's the first book of the two. Well, of the three in the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. It's just a fun romp through space about a great, crew on a spaceship, people of all sorts. Well, not just people, but different alien species of all sorts. Ooh. And I do just love how Becky Chambers can incorporate, modern day stuff like polyamory and, different family dynamics when it comes to raising kids into these different alien species, and no one can be that's so stupid, that doesn't make sense. It's what do you mean it doesn't make sense? It's aliens, come on. She just does a great job of that. It's basically like a road trip through space for the whole time. You'll learn to love all the characters. They're all very unique. I mean, they're all aliens, so
that's cute.
Very unique in their own ways. And it's just a good time. It's I love Becky Chambers because it's a very easy way to access sci-fi. Because sci-fi has always been this genre that's very white male dominated, and the way that they talk about women and sex is
thanks a lot, Dune.
Very backward. Yeah. So I feel like Becky Chambers is writing this stuff as a way to bring people in who wouldn't otherwise have wanted to read sci-fi because of that sort of a thing.
You have my interest.
Yeah, I'm going to make you read Becky Chambers.
I will.
It's going to be great. Sure. And honestly, there's relationships in those stories for us to talk about. We love
a good And honestly, I'm open to us talking about fantasy books or sci-fi as well.
Okay, good.
It doesn't just have to be contemporary romance.
I mean, it isn't already. We're talking historical fiction with Taylor Jenkin Reid.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the cusp, I feel like. But
yeah, it's true. All right. So that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is also just a great name of a book.
Is it? Yeah,
I think so. Come on. It's a little rambly, but
I short and to the point. Daisy Jones and the Six.
That's still
I know, it was a
5
joke.
words.
Just kidding. Okay.
What are you reading, Alyssa, or what have you read that you want to touch on?
I wish I wrote this book, man. It's called Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so this is the Fourth Wing book took us all by storm this year, and that was the biggest fantasy release until Divine Rivals. So Divine Rivals came out. It's a little bit more YA, and I hate YA. I do not relate to teenagers, but this book is so good. So it's essentially about 2 authors, so you would hate it because you hate reading about authors.
Yeah, the classic author self-insert into the book. I get it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's funny. So it's about, it's 2 writers, so they're both journalists. Sorry, I said authors. They're journalists, and they get linked by magical typewriters. So in this universe that they live in, it's controlled by gods. And there's a massive war going on with gods, but it's very it's kind of like Taylor Jenkin Reid, how she takes real life elements and puts them into something so it seems much more believable, the universe.
It's grounded.
Yeah, so that's kind of like this. It's they're working a very, the book starts out where they're at their work and they're work enemies, these 2 characters, and that's how it starts. It's very and then you learn there's this war about gods, and then you learn about the typewriter, and it starts to get more fantasy, but very subtly. It's very, very slow world building. But anyways, the point is they're writing to each other, and he knows that it's her, his rival from work, and she doesn't know it's him, and they essentially are linked through this. I don't want to give too much away.
Way to give the man all the power here.
Huh? Oh yeah, I guess so. I hate when that happens. But I did just spoil that she doesn't know who he is and he knows, but that's like literally within the first chapter.
Oh,
so
that's not spoiling.
It like happens. Yeah. It happens pretty fast, and then the book just escalates. Like the fact that it starts in an office with them being work rivals and builds to like this insane fantasy war is like the most wild thing. Anyways, the book is quite short as well, and the next book in the series is coming out I think in November or December.
Those are the books that you're saying that I definitely need to read. Okay,
I'm trying to get you to read Fourth Wing before I get this. Fourth Wing's bigger, but Divine Rivals is still really huge. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't expect to enjoy it because magical typewriters, so random.
Yeah, I feel like you would love magical typewriters.
Oh my god, after Dragons and like a Dragon Academy freaking Fourth Wing, that was hard to like jump to Divine Rivals, but Divine Rivals did really well.
The thing that jumped out to me was magical typewriters. I was like, oh.
It's like old school too. Like they have these like really special. Anyways, you have to read it. It's a fast read. I read it in one sitting. It was one of those.
Oh, I love those.
So good.
What was the last book that you read in the one sitting? Was it that one?
One sitting. I'm looking at my past. No, it was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. But we'll talk about that next episode. I'm going to use that as my book for next one.
Gotcha.
But Divine Rivals, if you haven't read it or heard of it, definitely check it out. I know it's YA, but ignore that. It's still really good for all ages.
Hey, you know what? We're still young adults.
Are we though?
Technically. I think so.
I'm almost 40.
No, you're not. You're not even like 35.
In like a month I am. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. So we can talk about Daisy Jones, a book we've both read.
All right, quick little synopsis for Daisy Jones and the Six before we get into it. Daisy is a girl coming of age in LA in the late 60s, sneaking into clubs on the Sunset Strip, sleeping with rock stars, and dreaming of singing at the Whiskey A Go-Go. The sex and drugs are thrilling, but it's rock and roll she loves most. By the time she's 20, her voice is getting noticed, and she has the kind of heedless beauty that makes people do crazy things. Also getting noticed is The Six, a band led by the brooding Billy Dunn. On the eve of their first tour, his girlfriend Camilla finds out she's pregnant, and with the pressure of impending fatherhood and fame, Billy goes a little wild on the road. A little.
Understatement.
Yeah. Daisy and Billy cross paths when a producer realizes that the key to supercharged success is to put the two together. What happens next will become the stuff of legends. The making of that legend is chronicled in the riveting and unforgettable novel, written as an oral history of one of the biggest bands of the 70s.
Sorry, before we jump into the book, what did you think of the show?
I liked it. I feel like a big part of reading the book that I felt I was missing. I liked the book. Probably gave it 4 stars as well.
Of course you did. I gave it 5 for the record.
Yeah, you give everything 5 stars.
I do not.
Yeah. But the one thing when I was reading through, just like Evelyn Hugo and her movies, because I get that like we can watch Little Women, and I love Little Women, especially Greta Gerwig's most recent adaptation of it.
Yep.
But one of the big things reading Daisy Jones was like, I wish I could listen to these songs.
Yeah.
So I got to experience those songs in the show.
Yeah.
But
I think they did a good job with the songs too.
They did do a good job, but it's also like they're not going to get groundbreaking genre defining music when they're just getting it for like TV
and the lyrics
soundtrack.
Were already written in the book, so they had to like find a way to make those work in songs that could be sold.
That was also one of the things I loved about the book, was that in the back they just had like all the lyrics of the songs, so you could at least read them. But that was also why I was like, I wish I could.
I also skimmed them. I was like, okay, this is the song. Like without hearing them, I was
it's
like,
poetry, Alyssa. It's poetry.
Sorry, I'm not as deep as you, Jen.
No, whatever.
So you liked the show. I liked the show too. I had a very different reaction to the characters in the show versus reading the book. So like obviously I loved the book. I gave it 5 stars, but one of the things for me was I actually really disliked Daisy. Like almost the whole way through the book, I was like, who is this chick? Like she is just too much for me.
Wait, you disliked her in the book?
Yeah. And then in the show, they made her much more likable, in my opinion. You could connect with her a little more. The fashion. There was like, I guess maybe I'm just saying that she was more aesthetically pleasing to the eyes.
Oh,
pleasing.
You saw an attractive woman. You're like, I like her now.
Yeah, I'm a piece of shit. Yeah. So, but that's not what I mean. There was just something about how they wrote her in the show, and like I think that you could empathize for her a little bit more than I could in the book,
which is interesting because I feel like there's a lot more empathy when it comes to book characters than movie characters.
I did empathize with her. It's just it was like I think the one thing too is in the show, the timeline is kind of shortened compared to when you're reading it in a way. For example, Billy's addiction in the show was so small. It was like half an episode where they really or maybe like one episode where they really dug into like him going through it. Whereas in the book, that was like half the book.
Well, I mean, he was going through addiction the whole time, but like, you mean binging?
Yeah, sorry. He was like actively I mean, he's always an addict. I don't know the verbiage on this. You know what I'm trying to say? Like he was, doing drugs and drinking for a lot of the books, and he was relapsing in parts of it and struggling, and that wasn't really touched in the show. It was very much like romanticized in like, oh, okay, he's better now. He doesn't like it was almost viewed like he just doesn't like seeing Daisy like that. Whereas in the book, he was so dislikable, and then in the show he was likable because it was like all of their worst traits were like way bigger in the book, I guess. They were kind of skimmed in the show.
Well, I think we do need to touch on the formatting of the book.
Yeah, for sure.
Narration, where it was different interviews with various members of the band, whether it's on the phone or video interviews. Mm-hmm. And they kind of they didn't really present the show that way, right? Like
they did present the show that way. They asked a question, I think, in the promo for the show, and then it showed each band member answer that question differently.
They did, yeah, but like that's where the difference came.
It was so much in the book.
But when it came to what actually happened, like in the show, they have to show us a series of events. Yeah. So to us, we're like, oh, that's what actually happened. And I like to take that interpretation of the show, where it's like, this is actually how things played out. And it might be different from how we read it, because how we read it was entirely depicted by the characters within it.
And that was like the biggest thing. Remember that episode when Daisy and Billy kiss outside the studio? Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
So in the book, like everybody who read it, when that happened, I remember going on the internet and everybody being like, that didn't happen in the books. They didn't kiss. And then I was like, yeah, they did. They're just unreliable narrators. And especially to who the narrator is, they're not going to admit that because nobody else knows. Why would they ever incriminate themselves in this situation? Shit. So of course they kissed, and so everyone was so pissed that they like changed the book, and I was like, they didn't change the book. You just saw how unreliable the narrators are.
You saw the true events as they happened, not just hearing about them from the people that they happened to, which is I love that way.
Did you like having it through interviews and transcripts?
Oh yeah,
I loved it.
No, it was great.
Wait, did you read the audiobook as well?
What do you mean, listen to the audiobook?
Listen, sorry. Yeah.
No, I did
you
not.
You should. I'll give you my Audible.
Do they have different voices?
Yeah,
for
and it's like
people?
famous people.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, and like Karen's voice is so perfect in it, and the way that they do it, and like there's like they do like the crinkling of like you know what I mean, like little stuff like that. Like,
welcome
is this thing on?
ASMR.
Yeah, like they totally do stuff like that. So I read a physical, and then I did the audiobook, and then I watched the show, and I think the best way to consume it is the audiobook
because it is such an audio forward
it was so good
type of book. You know, it's about music, of course, specifically rock in the 70s, which I love. You know,
your favorite
Almost
movie,
Famous was one of my favorite movies, but I spent like the past year working as a music journalist. You know, like it's
your passion.
It really hits me. It's awesome.
So I had a question. So we talked a little bit about Daisy already and like how I felt with her movie versus book. What did you think of Daisy overall? Like, what were your thoughts on her?
Oh, she was great.
You loved her.
She was like, I mean, I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid framed so much of Daisy Jones and the Six on Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks and that whole situation.
Stevie Nicks is very likable. Daisy Jones is not.
I think it depends, you know, like I think it depends on the framework, like the reference point, because like we're thinking Stevie Nicks as like this rock goddess,
this icon,
of the past, but like imagine how we might have felt about her at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
As a celebrity, you know, we touched on that in our Evelyn Hugo episode. Yeah. Of like people, you know, keeping up with what celebrities are up to, who they're dating, what the drama is. And in a very misogynistic world, if there's drama between, you know, two people in a band and it's looking like this amazing band might break up because of relationship drama.
Yeah.
I could see society like turning against the woman in that situation, because that's usually what happens.
Yeah. That even happens now in 2023.
Yeah. So I feel like in the 70s, you know, you were talking about like how Taylor Swift got so much shit for like dating people and then breakups,
and they were
whatever.
awful to her, and she still got shit for it.
So, you know, probably Daisy Jones and
Billy.
No, sorry. Who did I just say in Fleetwood Mac?
It's Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, so I think Daisy Jones and Stevie Nicks were probably in those same situations, with society looking at them as like, oh, this fucking woman's like ruining this relationship and gonna break this band up. Whereas like if you know, we at least have Daisy Jones' perspective here, and I'm sure we could probably get Stevie Nicks if there might be like a documentary or a memoir or something. I probably should have read that before this episode. It must be so difficult, even being a rock star.
Yeah.
But it must still just be so difficult to exist in that time as a woman trying to like... I mean, there was a lot of that with Karen too, where it's like, I just want to be a fucking member of the band here, you know?
She just wants to play music. She doesn't care about all their bullshit.
Yeah, but because
Karen and Daisy are so different. All three of the women in that book are so different.
Yeah.
I love that. But sorry, just about Daisy, what did you think of her growth as a person? Like for me, that was the biggest arc of growth of any. Actually, that's not true. Carrie Soto also has an incredible growth arc, but Daisy Jones really grows throughout the story. And like, don't you think?
I feel like she more grows like at the very end of the story.
I mean, yeah, because all of it happens within 1 year? All the interviews?
I mean...
Because they were only a band for like a year. They only had one album.
They were a band for a year, but like they existed prior. I was looking up the timeline actually.
Yeah, tell me.
And the Dunn brothers and their band were existing as their thing prior to Daisy Jones, obviously. But for quite a few years. Like they put out their self-titled album, and it did pretty well. And then they put out another one, and then they were like, oh, we should bring a duet in for one of these songs, and that was Daisy Jones. And then they go on tour and blah, blah, blah. But, like, you know, Daisy was also doing her thing prior to that, trying to put out her own album, but then the producers didn't want her lyrics. They wanted her to just be like a hot, you know, pop star, basically.
That ain't Daisy.
That ain't Daisy.
No.
And so, like, there was a lot of time there. It didn't all just happen.
I don't think it was. Yeah, I mean, for sure. But she was also very young. Like, this isn't growth. This is like the time that you're giving her is like from what, she's 18 to 20. Like, I don't know. I could see if you said 18 to 30, or like some of the other stories that we're about to talk and read about, they had such bigger growth arc timelines.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like I didn't really see much growth.
No,
like
it was
obviously
like
compared to the Daisy who's being interviewed. Yeah, I mean she's old now and like doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but like also at the we're just gonna jump right to the end. But at the end, Daisy is the one who inevitably says go to Billy to run to Camila and like go back to her, because Daisy is the one that realizes they are toxic together, that they're two flames and that doesn't work together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I feel like she might have known a bit of that all
she
throughout.
She didn't, because she thought they were perfect for each other and she just wanted him. She didn't care about Camilla or their children in the books.
They were still holding off though. I mean, was that more
I think
Billy
she
than
let
it was...
Billy free. I think she like released him, and she chose to. She never looked back. She never joined the band again. She fully went her separate way, because that was the only way to like let Billy go, because Camilla and her had an understanding.
Well, yeah, there was that conversation between her and
epic.
Camilla, and Camilla was like,
Camilla.
he's in love with you and you have to not be in the band anymore. Mm-hmm. Which,
and that's the thing, is she
enough.
But like early Daisy pre-married to the Prince guy, I don't think she would have left if Camilla had said that. I think she had some growth.
She definitely did have some growth, but like it wasn't like drastic growth by any means. I mean,
I don't know, because it's hard, because for a lot of their relationship, a bigger relationship to talk about is Daisy and Billy's relationship with drugs and alcohol. So that's like the bigger relationship that was within their situation for me.
Yeah, I actually really liked that this didn't become, because I was worried it was, that it didn't become the... Like, I guess it's not really cliche, but like, because it just happens so much, where the story about a rock band in the 70s is about, the lead singer being addicted to drugs and then relapsing and having it ruin his life and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. That wasn't inevitably what ended the band.
No, yeah. And yeah. I love that, Billy, with all his faults, managed, he went through all that, slept with all these people, and did all these drugs, and then his daughter was born, and Camilla was like, yeah, that's it, man. Like, you're with us.
Oh, I loved that.
He did.
Yeah.
And he did, and then, Daisy was a whole thing.
It's because Camilla's good for him, and Daisy's not.
Yeah. And he was, keeping it at bay, and they had different tour buses.
Oh, I loved that.
The whole time I was waiting for the shoe to drop of Billy's just gonna relapse. And
then, he does. He drinks a shot, but it isn't a full relapse.
Yeah. And that, I was waiting for him to just completely relapse, with totally. Daisy, and it just be this huge dramatic thing, but that's not what happened. But I do think that instead of drugs, Daisy was a drug to him. Yep. And he was holding himself back from Daisy.
Yeah. And I think Daisy's lifestyle was also a part of the reason why he wanted her so bad, was because that was the side of Billy where he could do drugs, he could drink. And I think that made Daisy more attractive to him in a way, subconsciously. I think that his addiction was showing up through his love for Daisy. That's what I honestly think.
And then to reframe this too, because let's not, it's Daisy Jones in the Six, not Billy Dunn in the Six. So let's frame it more from Daisy's perspective.
Yeah.
Where I do wonder if part of why Billy was so enticing to her was because he existed as this solid
family man.
Yeah. And she was existing in the rock and roll, tumultuous drug world. And she's like, oh man, that, what Camilla has, that's solid.
You also have to think where Daisy is from. Daisy craves love and family more than anyone else in this entire book, because she was neglected and ignored and belittled by her own parents, specifically her mother. And I think that translates to she sees this conventionally happy family in Billy, Camilla, and then their kids. And I think that there is a drive there for her as well. That's the thing, is Daisy and Billy's love isn't that. It's much deeper than you'd think, because it's not actually about I think that they do connect on their creative level, but I think it's so much deeper of they're wanting what's beyond what the other one has.
Yeah, they're seeing in each other the thing that they desperately want, they yearn for.
Yeah,
that isn't necessarily that person, it's what they represent.
I know that you want to talk more about Daisy, and of course the book's called that, but I do want to dig into, especially now that we're talking about Billy's addiction, is comparing Billy and Graham's journey with drugs and alcohol, because for some reason Billy is hit harder than Graham is, in that way. Graham, he's not what's the word for somebody who doesn't do drugs or anything? He's not straight edge.
Yeah,
he's definitely doing drugs and he's drinking, but it's never to the extreme at which Billy had that. And I had a thought reading it that, Graham was younger when their father abandoned them, and Billy still remembers it. And I think that tumultuous upbringing affected Billy in a way it just didn't affect Graham. And I thought that was really interesting, seeing both of their exact same paths. They're both in this band. They're both projected to stardom. They're both going through that. But yet Graham keeps his nose clean. There's different there between him and Billy. And I know they're different people, fictitious people, but I just thought that was interesting, because Graham is younger, and it does point to the fact that when they do see their dad in the club in that one scene at the beginning, I always say scene, in the one part of the book when they run into their dad, Graham doesn't recognize him. Billy does, because Graham was too young. And so for me, that triggered something in my mind, and I was like, this is making so much more sense why Billy is having such a hard time compared to Graham.
Yeah, I do wonder about that too, because so much of Billy really falling into the pit of drugs and promiscuity and all that happened before having a kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He did have a wife though.
Yeah. He was already, I think, wasn't he drinking quite a bit before they got married? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. But what I'm getting at here is that I'm sure that both Billy and Graham had deep-rooted stuff when it came to their dad. And maybe to Billy, it was I'm afraid of fatherhood. I'm afraid of becoming my father.
Yeah. definitely that affected him.
I need to like live my rock star life first. In fact, Camilla was like, here, have a few months to do that, but
Camilla's
then
a badass.
Once I have the kid, like, you're locked in, baby.
But I think he stayed true to it because a lot of like why he actually stayed with his sobriety, I think has a lot to do with him not being his father.
Like, unlike being afraid to be his father. But whereas with
but Graham's not afraid. He's dying to be a father.
Well, yeah, like, yes, he's not like using drugs and sleeping around as a way of drugs, but well, yeah, he definitely used drugs, but like he's not using them as like a way to escape from like the idea of becoming his dad, because he didn't see his dad as like a bad father.
Totally.
So he instead is like, I want to create this like beautiful family dynamic. I want a wife with kids. And Karen very much not. Like, she just wants to be a rock star.
Wait, before we jump into that, because I'm obsessed with Karen and Graham. I know you do. But I just want to ask about one more relationship before we hop into that. What did you think of Billy and Graham's actual relationship, though, as brothers? Like, you have two brothers, and I'm just curious, like, what you thought of their relationship, because they have a very interesting relationship as well.
I honestly don't remember too much of their relationship.
That's the thing. That's because, so my thought process is with that is Graham always just kind of had Billy's back, and he didn't really speak up. Even in the interviews, you'll notice he never says anything bad about Billy. He will acknowledge Billy has struggles, but he never like goes out of his way to say anything. And the only time he ever goes against Billy is putting a song on the album that Daisy wants and Billy doesn't. If you remember that, they all vote. And that's the only time in the whole book that Graham goes against Billy, I'm pretty sure. And so I thought that was really interesting how loyal they are to each other.
Well, Graham is to Billy. I don't know if the same was the other way around.
Because someone talked about removing, I think it was Eddie. Something about Graham, and Billy was like, not a fucking chance, and didn't even, like, they are so good to each other, but it isn't like out in the open. Like, it's not a very like even you were like, I don't really remember their relationship. Like, it wasn't really at the forefront, but I actually really loved their relationship.
I vaguely remember a part in the show, and I think Graham tried to go to Billy with like
it was about Karen's pregnancy.
Yeah. And I don't think Billy was there for him.
No, because Billy was about to relapse. That was the episode where he was like, I think he does relapse and drinks.
It's tough when two people need to lean on each other at the same time, you know, and both people just collapse inward.
But that's the thing, is they just couldn't. There was times in the book where Graham was definitely more there for Billy than Billy ever was for Graham. But I don't know, it's tricky because, like I said, Graham didn't struggle with the addictions that Billy did.
Yeah, and I get that too as a younger brother to an older brother. Like, I remember as a kid, I idolized my older brother. I wanted to hang out with him as friends. And I think I remember this situation in the band where it was like Graham and his friends were like just playing some music, and then Billy was like, hey, like I can jump in, you know? And then that's how it all kind of happened. So now it's like Billy with Graham and his buddies is what started this whole thing.
Totally.
So Graham's probably like, oh, you know, like we gotta be cool for Billy.
Well, he clearly idolizes his brother, definitely, which is very cool. But sorry, I wanted to hop into that before we talk about Graham and Karen. So we talked a little bit about Graham wanting children, and then you mentioned Karen did not. Did you? So the situation is Karen gets pregnant and she wants an abortion, and Graham wants her to keep it, and she essentially says like, well, who's gonna raise it because I want to be in this band? And he was like, well, and he like didn't have an answer. That was the thing. And so I was just curious, did you personally empathize with Graham or Karen?
Obviously,
or
Karen.
Sympathize. Same.
I mean, like, you know, to give some context, like both me and Alyssa individually don't want children.
Yeah.
I have had a vasectomy. Like, that train has long left the station. And, you know, like, power to Karen, especially in the 70s. Well, thank you. Power to Karen for being like, especially in that situation too, because like realistically, they both have the same job, right? Yeah. Like, they're both making the same money. They're both doing the same thing. It comes with the same weight. So it exists so much outside of like what the patriarchy put women in, where it's
also like, well, it's the 70s. Roe v. Wade didn't even happen until 1973. So that was like the peak time of this bullshit, and she wanted to get an abortion. Like, that just shows how badly she does not want a child.
Yeah. I feel like it's a very 500 Days of Summer situation where off the jump she says like, hey, like, we're just having fun here, like, this isn't as serious as you know.
But Graham was clearly very in love with her since the beginning.
Yeah, and wanting it to become this, like, beautiful family marriage kind of thing. And, like, hey, man, like...
It's also, like, surprisingly, in my experience, in like, relationships, it's usually the other way around, where the guy's like, I'm not looking for anything serious, and the girl's like, I can change him. Like, I feel like it was like the gender roles were kind of swapped in Karen and Graham, and I think that was probably on purpose. But I just find that really interesting that's because that's how I know that it can go both ways. It's just more commonly you see it as the other way around. Yeah,
that's very true. And I don't know, it's tough, especially because it's not just like, oh, okay, well, never mind, like, we'll go our separate ways. It's like,
no,
you're in a band together.
Yeah.
You're going to be seeing each other.
They're stuck together.
Yeah, and he, poor little Graham, just... I'm glad that in the end he, like, got himself a little family and everything was nice and he got to be a dad, but, like...
Yeah, what did you think about... So at the end, he was, like, very happy with his family. He had, like, moved on, and then they asked Karen. And she was, like, essentially like, yeah, I think about Graham sometimes. And she, like, clearly very much still cared about him, is how I read it. I almost want to find it in the book, but the way that she said it, I was like, it was kind of sad because she always made it seem like we just talked about she didn't care, but I think she actually really was in love with him.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure she was.
But she would have never said that in the book.
Yeah, but...
And I love that about her.
At the same time, I don't think there was any sort of, like, regret there. Right? Like, she knew off the jump that, like, we are not endgame here.
Yeah. I mean, I think they could have been endgame, take out the child situation. If he didn't want children, I think they could have ended up together.
Well, I mean, her priority was always to be a rock star.
And she was.
Not even the
after
band,
Daisy Jones in the Six.
Just to do music. Her priority was music. It wasn't just the band, because she left a different band for this band.
Yeah, she did. And she went to another band after this one. I think she went to like one or two. I can't remember, but it was something along those lines. I don't know. I really love Karen. I think Karen might be one of my favorite characters in this book, if not my favorite. But I do want to talk about the relationship between Karen and Camilla. Since we're talking about Karen not wanting children, Camilla is the opposite. She wants a family. She wants a big family. But she never judges Karen for not wanting a child. She even drives her to her abortion. What did you think about their relationship?
It was what Camilla, it was what Camilla couldn't get from Daisy because of the whole Billy situation.
You mean like a friendship?
Yeah, or like someone who like Karen understood the situation, obviously. Like, and it's a very interesting, very unique situation of like, my relationship is a little messed up because of rock stardom, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that they can both relate in that regard because, again, Karen is dating Graham, who also is a rock star.
Which Camilla notices, the only person in the entire group that even notices that. Nobody else noticed.
Yeah, and, like, there's got to be that sense of womanly camaraderie.
Well, see, that's where it gets tricky, too, because when Billy is cheating on Camilla before the baby is born, she calls and Karen picks up and Karen goes, I don't know, Camilla, and she will not rat out Billy.
Yeah, that's
because
tough.
She's in a weird spot with the band. So she, like, girl code, she really didn't have Camilla's back, but I think their relationship actually grew later.
Well, at the time of that, I don't think that they were very close, right?
Yeah,
like Camilla hadn't come out.
Still, I remember being like,
California.
I would have probably told her because I'm shady, but for women.
Yeah. And then at that point, well, again, we're talking Karen's priority is playing music.
You're right.
And that would jeopardize the band and her getting to play music. So, that was before, establishing a friendship with Camilla, I think. Yeah. So any other time. Afterwards, but that was pretty shady. That was tough to see.
But that was early. You're right, though. That was very early, and their relationship grew a lot from then. And I really loved what it grew into because they just had. It wasn't. You could tell more in the books than the show. Just the way that those two interacted. I just really loved Camilla and Karen, and then I also loved Karen and Daisy because Karen always had Daisy's back in every decision. She was not afraid to stand up to Billy. The opposite of Graham. It was always like Karen being like, fuck yeah, to Daisy. And she knew Daisy was a mess Like, she looked out for her, but she wasn't mothering her, because that's not Karen's nature.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like that probably also comes from both of them having this innate understanding that, like, we're punching up here. Like, we are working against the grain, given the industry, given the 70s. Like, as women here in this male-dominated industry, male-dominated band, we both need to look out for each other, obviously. So, and like, you know, not that they ever had that conversation explicitly, but like, yeah, obviously, you know, oh, Daisy's getting shit on for something. It doesn't matter whether or not that's because she's a woman. It's like, no, like, you need an ally here.
Totally. In your opinion, did you like Camilla and Billy or Billy and Daisy? Like, who did you root for when you were reading it?
I was never rooting for Daisy and Billy.
Yeah, me neither.
Never,
not for
ever.
1 second. I was like, girl, get your shit together. I don't know why I blamed her, but I think because she was so chaotic, and like, I think the part of the book that sent out to me, and like the writing in this part was really good, is when Billy went to her hotel and she got out of the pool and cut her foot on glass. Do you remember that?
No.
She was so fucked up on drugs, she didn't even notice it. She sliced her foot, and she was like bleeding. She was just so chaotic, and I was like, girl, like, I just could not even, and I know that that's addiction and like it's a disease, but it was so hard. I was like, in that moment I was cringing, and I was like, I just go home to Camilla, man. Like, this is just too much chaos.
Well, again, I feel like when it comes to like choosing between Billy and Camilla or Billy and Daisy, Daisy represents the
party world,
addled, you know, rock star lifestyle, and it's
and I think that's the only reason he truly loved her. I'm doing quotations with my fingers, was because I don't think that he like loved Daisy.
Well, that brings to question then the end of the book, where it's like, hey, Dad, like.
But she had grown at that point.
Yeah.
You just spoiled it. We hadn't talked about the hey dad part yet.
But like, but then like, you know, so does he not still love the grown version of Daisy that isn't like doing the drugs and being kind of wild?
Yeah, I don't know.
But you know what? Yes, though, I do think so. Let me answer my own question here.
Yeah, you go.
Because I do think that like they did fall in love with each other in the deeper sense when they were artistically when they were writing lyrics together and talking about their pasts. And
I just can't imagine connecting with someone over art.
The thing that I was meaning to bring up about Daisy and Billy was Billy's songwriting. Yeah. And so much of it was about Camilla.
Oh, yeah.
And Daisy had to sing these songs, but she was also given the opportunity to rewrite them. Yeah. And that was Honeycomb. That was the big deal there.
Honeycomb was my favorite.
Where she just kind of adjusted the song to make it like not about this loving ending. Relationship. Yeah.
It turns into a question, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, it turns into a question.
Yeah. Of if he can stay sober. That's what it is, to be good there for Camilla. I think that was like the lines. Yeah. Something along that.
Yeah, so that must have like been another aspect of that relationship growing together, of almost like bearing themselves, not necessarily saying, these are my feelings, this is how I feel, but like doing so through songwriting and poetry. Oh,
they definitely wrote, and you hear it when they're writing the album together, like not the one where she's taking his lyrics and changing it, the one they're writing together, they are definitely writing to each other.
Oh god,
like that's how they're expressing their interest, and because neither of them can communicate to save their fucking lives unless it's through music.
But it's also like, this is so obvious, you guys. Like, come on.
Imagine being like Karen, Eddie, and Graham in the room when they're bringing those songs to you and they start singing it. You're like, I would have been like, ooh, this is awkward. You guys are being sus.
I feel like we're third, fourth, fifth, sixth wheeling here.
Yeah, literally. What do you think motivated Camilla to stay with Billy though? Like, why do you think because for me, like, I am so, the second he was like crazy with Daisy, I would have been like, okay, see you later.
Oh, the money for no, I'm kidding.
But I mean, you know what? It was the 70s and he was a famous musician.
Well, I mean,
but I think she really loved him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that they started seeing each other when they were playing, when the band was playing wedding gigs, you know?
Literally.
Like, he wasn't any sort of a rock star at the time, and you know, they had a child on the way. That's a huge factor for people staying together and making it work for the kids. But I do think she genuinely loved him.
Yeah, I think that they had like a real love connection, and that's why Camila stayed. I think she always saw the best in Billy, whereas Daisy always saw the worst in Billy.
Yeah. And I also wonder too, like, because Camila met him before the drugs and before the stardom and all that, and I think that might have been a lot of the issue with Billy, like trying to stay true to the man he was when him and Camila started seeing each other.
Yeah.
And the rock star doing drugs, sleeping around kind of guy.
Yeah.
That I feel like, that's the rock star dream, right?
Is it?
Maybe. I mean, maybe that's
I like
more
to think
of a...
Harry Styles would never be like that.
Maybe that's like more of a teenage boy thing of like, I want to be a rock star.
It's very Almost Famous, 1970. I get you.
Famous.
Did you see the twist coming at the end via their daughter?
I mean, I never really thought too much about who might have been interviewing.
It blew my mind.
The story could have ended without the interviewer even being revealed,
totally.
right? And
but
it would have been
added that extra element and made them more unreliable.
I do like how it framed the unreliability, because it's like, now you know who
I think that was
to.
the key part.
I don't know how I feel about the whole, like, tell Billy to go call Daisy Jones. It gave me a little bit too much of How I Met Your Mother ending flashback.
I don't know, though. That's a
PTSD.
Common thing. That's a common thing, though. When someone is dying, they will often turn to their partner and be like, I hope that you meet someone else. That's like a very common thing, because they don't want them to be lonely and without them. So for me, Camila is so selfless throughout the entire fucking book. She gives up her entire life for Billy to follow his dreams. For her to be selfless in the end and tell him to go pursue Daisy Jones feels so on brand to me for Camila that it's like insane. Like, I think that is the most Camila thing that she did.
It is. I don't know.
I know you get the ick. You're like very, I don't know. Okay, so anyone who doesn't know Chandler, he's very like against any sort of infidelity or cheating or lying in relationships. He's a very open communication. He's not like against, I'm just going to speak for you, open relationships or like polyamory or anything like that, as long as it's communicated and not like a cheating mentality. And so I know this about Chandler, but so I feel like the ideology to you of seeing like Billy and Daisy together in any aspect at this point, it seems, I'm guessing, is not ideal for you.
Like, I'm sure it's fine. Like, when someone dies, sure, like, that's okay, go on.
Okay, fair.
Go off,
Go off, sis.
But it definitely, and like it is, again, the name of the book is Daisy Jones and the Six, so it is about Daisy Jones.
Yeah.
But it did just feel a little bit like one of those, like, oh, how convenient that someone died, so that now that...
I mean, they were so old at that point, though. It's like he gave his life to Camila.
But like, how convenient now.
Do you think they would have actually dated? Do you think they would have gotten together? And if it would have worked, do you think so?
I don't know. Like, it seemed like the whole book was about this relationship shouldn't work. Like, no, like these are bad. These people are bad for each other.
Yeah.
But like, there is still love there.
Like, they grew, but I don't think that I think without the drugs and alcohol and the partying, taking all of that out of it, and the like adventure between like he's married and like all those aspects, take that out and just put the Billy and Daisy together, I don't think they're compatible.
Oh,
that's my thought process.
Normal ass people like having a mediocre situation.
I just don't think it's like, maybe that's me. People probably disagree, but that's my view on
sound off in the comments, everybody.
What comments? Are there comments?
There might be comments. I don't know. YouTube, if we put it on there.
Okay, so let's talk about Teddy Price and his role and relationship with Billy, because he didn't really have much of a relationship with the rest of the band other than Daisy, because he did connect with Daisy and he did look out for her.
But he was like a father figure.
He was such to both of them. He never sexualized Daisy in any way like most men would to a young, beautiful woman. He looked out for Daisy and he looked out for Billy, and he put their best interests at heart, which is so rare in the music industry. And yeah, Billy was like Teddy was Billy's point of contact for like sobriety, which I really loved. And Teddy was one of my favorite characters in the book. And
in the show, I don't know if it was in the book, but definitely in the show, he was the one to drive Billy to the hospital. But then when Billy was like, I can't fucking do this, he was like, all right, well, we got a different place to take you to then, buddy.
Yeah, and then to rehab. I think he paid for Billy's rehab, I'm pretty sure.
Probably, yeah.
I don't need to Google it, it's fine.
And then, his death was the cause of Billy's relapse.
Yeah. Well, part of it, yeah, for sure. And he didn't have any, that was always his person to call if he was struggling. And he couldn't call him as well, which was heartbreaking.
Yeah, good old Teddy. Theodore. You hero.
Yeah.
I feel like TJR always has to kill someone.
Yeah, who did she kill in Evelyn Hugo? She killed everyone.
I mean,
Daisy Jones, she killed Teddy.
Carrie Soto, the dad.
Yeah.
Fucking spoiler alert for other TJR books. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, the mom in Malibu Rising.
Yep.
That was sad too. Damn, yeah.
A lot of dead parents out here.
Death. Everybody dies.
Universe.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, death truly comes to us all. And with that, I feel like we'll end our...
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else you got here.
No, I was going to ask you if there was anything else you wanted to talk about, because I know that you were really passionate about this one.
No, I think I'm good.
We covered a lot of it.
An hour and 5 minutes. So
I mean, a lot of it'll be cut. There's time, but I do think that we covered a lot of relationships in that one, and there were some really good ones in this book.
I'd say there's more relationships to talk about somehow than Evelyn Hugo and her 7 husbands.
Yeah,
because it should be Evelyn Hugo and her 7 husbands and not the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah,
let's be real.
I
guess it would have been a little too close to the 7 dwarves at that point.
I guess so, but yeah, I am stoked we were able to talk about that. So thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Read the Room.
Thanks, Megan and Carly.
If you would hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, that would
smash that subscribe button.
I knew you were
smash the like button.
Yeah, that would really help. That's how we get noticed on what is this called?
Notice
podcast
us.
website.
Well, yeah, Apple Music, Spotify, all that jazz.
And also connect with us on social media. We're Read the Room, so you can find us there. Okay, next week, tune in. We're going to do Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Oh, yeah.
See
Surf's up, baby.
Jesus.
Bye.